short presentation and then public comment / question at the end. Let me just get the slides up. Excuse me. Wait, oops, forgot to actually hit share screen. Share. Okay. Yes. Do that. Yep. Okay. Oh. Okay. Right. So let's try this again and share. All right. Can anyone in the audience confirm that they can see the keynote PowerPoint? Yep. All right. Thanks, Mike. All right. So thanks everyone for coming who's here. This is public meeting regarding the NJEDA's Urban Investment Fund program that the city of New Brunswick was fortunate enough to receive as a hold on, I gotta admit somebody into the meeting and I can't find my cursor. Let's see if I just hit enter. Okay, this is fun. Why is it like this? Okay, participants waiting on. Okay, oop, admit, and then yep, and then admit. Okay, okay. So hopefully this is still working. And as I was saying, welcome to the City of New Brunswick Urban and Investment Fund meeting, not Urban Enterprise Zone, which is something I say too often. And so this is a, well, hold on, it's not, there we go. So quick through the agenda. We'll go through a brief introduction of what the program is, the NJEDA's UIF Urban Investment Fund program. The project types that are eligible for funding under this program. What we have right now slated as our proposed projects that we intend to submit, barring input from today, excuse me, input from any comments we receive between now and submission, and any input we have with the EDA in the next one or two follow-up meetings that we'll have between now and submission. Number 6, we'll have a rough timeline of anticipated deployment, application, and deployment and completion, and then we'll open it up to comment at the very end. So hopefully this will be relatively quick. So as an introduction, the NJEDA early this year launched a program called the Urban Investment Fund. So some of you may be familiar with the fact that the federal government adopted the American Rescue Plan. I think it's about 2 or 3 years ago now. And some leftover funding that the EDA had from the ARP, they reprogrammed into this program called the UIF. And they selected 6 municipalities in New Jersey, 6 urban municipalities, New Brunswick among them. I think it was New Brunswick, Camden, Newark, I want to say Patterson, Trenton, and someone else. And they split the money between those municipalities. I think the 2 biggest places, I think Newark and Patterson got along the lines of $7 million, and everyone else got about $5.7 million, just equal break. And so the intent of it is that a lot of urban cores haven't quite bounced back to pre-pandemic levels of economic activity and foot traffic, and to use this investment as a way to inject funding and excitement and potential ways of getting that foot traffic back now, years after, and with funds that were essentially designed to help the country bounce back post-pandemic. And so there's a box in which those funds are allowed to operate, and why the EDA chose to create this program with their remaining funds. Um, that's sort of the general gist of the program. Um, there are three eligible project types. So, three things that the city is allowed to request to do with the money. And they are uh, we can do building rehabilitation projects. So, one thing we can do is we can uh, do adaptive reuse of all commercial building into a mixed use building. It has to be mixed use, and that could be with 20% affordable units if it has a residential component, if it's mixed use, or adaptive reuse of a commercial building into a different kind of commercial building uh, to make it successful and active once again in a new iteration. There are building reuse studies, essentially adaptive reuse studies. And let me walk it back for a second. The building re apologize. The building rehabilitation program projects have a maximum per project spend of $3.5 million. So any project that would need more than $3.5 million for uh, an adaptive reuse project is probably a no-go for that type of project. But there's a ceiling on each of these types of how much can be spent on each project. For building reuse studies, there's a cap of $200,000, and you can do three. And it's essentially if someone has a building in this case in New Brunswick, and would like to run a study to explore adaptive reuse, like it's a older office building and they can't rent it out to office use anymore, and they want to see about converting it into a mixed use residential building or something like that, that we could fund a study for that purpose, up to $200,000, three times. And finally, public space use investments, which are essentially uh, what it says. It says it's investment into the public space. Now, as we'll get into, it's a little bit more, it's a little bit more narrow or complicated than as advertised in the way it says. But we'll get there, and we have asterisks next to the types that we're looking to do. Specifically, we're considering one rehabilitation project and two public space projects. All right, so let's go next. So this is the list of the, as of right now, proposed projects that we've been considering and workshopping through with the EDA since about June, um, with a lot of back and forth. So one consideration is to do an adaptive reuse of the Brunswick Bank and Trust building, which is a very nice looking older building that used to be a bank, right next to Fat Cactus, and it's a lovely building inside. It needs a lot of love. It needs a lot of attention, and there is a desire to turn it into a gallery, museum, event space location. Um, the building's beautiful. We think that it would, in that use, it would be an added draw for the downtown. It's not really something we have there. It's not really something we have downtown in any real meaningful capacity at that level, and certainly not with the unique architecture and components that that building is composed of. And so we would love to salvage that building and have it turned into something that everyone can enjoy. Uh, and we see the high potential with these funds for that. Um, Secondly, but not necessarily more important than number three, would be a public use investment regarding there's a triangular parcel at the corner of, well, it's not the corner, it's sort of a triangle, Spring Street, excuse me, and Albany Street, that was left over as part of the Helix redevelopment. There was a straggler grassy field. The field right now has no use, but it is being used as a bus stop, I think, for one of the coach run lines. I don't know if it's a contracted line for NJ Transit or it's a regular coach line, but it stops there at the triangle. And we're, gosh, I'm sorry, and we're looking to turn that spot into a gateway for the city, along with the continued use of the stop. But as a location for a gateway and for a an art installation sort of in the center of that that location, sort of as a way to liven up that intersection again as a gateway, and sort of hopefully use the art as a way to interconnect that space with the greater Helix redevelopment project. And lastly, and not just lastly in order, but not lastly of importance, we'd be looking to do a an art acquisition project where we would purchase uh, some statues from Sewell Johnson, who is who we rent statues, or I don't know if the city does or City Market does the renting. I think it's City Market who does the renting of the statues. That we would work with City Market and other folks and make a selection of some statues to permanently purchase as New Brunswick property and have them installed throughout the downtown corridor. Um, we think that, you know, people love the photo ops that they present, and we'd be very careful and mindful to, you know, try to find photographs that work with New Brunswick's ambiance, with our vibe, and that would lend themselves to good photo ops when visitors come through. Um, it We think that it has the potential for people to take extra trips into New Brunswick as just a part of livening up, as just something quirky that they can do here, but also it adds a reason for uh, people who are already in town to come downtown. If there's visitors from the Big Ten for football games, it gives them a reason, like an extra reason, like a fun thing to do downtown that they might not have wherever they're from. And we think that it would be a nice little attraction for our core there. Um, so right now our timeline is looking like, you know, today is this meeting. We'll entertain feedback for the rest of the month. Uh, we have to submit the application by November 1st. So basically, as soon as October 31st is up, we'll be submitting this application into the EDA with our selected proposals. Um, Circa January 2025, we'd anticipate that should everything go smoothly and everything's awarded, we would have funding or guarantees of funding at that point that we would be able to begin the selection process for the sculptures, while also preparing the specifications for going out to bid for the work at the bank Brunswick Bank Trust building, and for the modifications to the triangle at Albany. And spring, March, April, we would hopefully by then be able to purchase, maybe not be in receipt of the actual sculptures, uh, and then we could also have the contracts in place and awarded for the construction work. And then hold on, the well, I remember what's there. It's just blocked by the folks who are in the call on my screen. By September 2026, all the projects have to be completed by September 30th. Technically, the ARP funding needs to be expended by December 31st of 2026, if I recall correctly. And sort of the sort of hard, but not entirely hard deadline of September 30th is the EDA making sure that these projects are in fact essentially done by then, and that nobody's waiting till the last minute. So in the unlikely or hopefully unlikely situation where one of our projects is a month out on September 25th, it's not going to be a crisis that it drags out an extra couple of weeks to the end of October. It would be a crisis if it would go into January. That's not something that's possible. So there's a hard stop of December 31st, 2026, and a soft hard stop of this September 30th. And we would like to have everything done well in advance of that, so we're not running up against the limits of what's being given to us here. So I'm going to open it up to comment. if anybody has any thoughts that they want to email me, feel free. That's my email. I'll be fielding and making note of all the comments that we receive between now and the end of the month. And that's just the general presentation. And now I'm more than happy to open it up once I can figure out how to stop sharing my screen and get back onto the Zoom. So there it is. Okay, so who would like to go first with any questions, comments?
I have a couple of questions or comments.
Sure.
I'll just ask one for now and then give
Just
space for other people
yeah,
if
can you
they
just give me
things to
one
say.
second to just
Yeah.
grab my pen so I can
Mhm.
jot them down?
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna just open up like a notepad and just like type them up instead. Okay. This is in case, I don't have an answer immediately. I hope to be able to be responsive here, but and well, hopefully it doesn't come to that. So please go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So one of the projects mentioned was the creation of a city gateway. I was wondering if you could just explain a little bit more, what that is, what that would look like, how it would
Sure.
function. I'm just less familiar with that
Yeah. So,
concept.
I mean, the terminology city gateway is a little not intentionally ambiguous, but it is a term that could mean a lot, right? So a town, and some places have this, they'll have like a big archway at the entryway where you come in and it might have whatever the name of the municipality is, or maybe you've seen them where they have these things that are like really large billboards that are very ornate. And some have fountains and stuff, and it'll have like, welcome to South Brunswick. I think they have one on Route 1, I think. And so those could be gateways. But in this case, well, first of all, a lot of people come through into New Brunswick on 27, either from Highland Park or off of 18, coming that way into sort of the hospital Helix area if they're driving in. If they're coming off the train station, that triangle is right in front of them. It's their welcome into New Brunswick. And and also anybody who's taking 27 or Easton into, if they're driving, into the immediate core, and that's sort of where their end end of their trip is if they're going to work at the Helix or RWJ or visiting one of these places. Um, that's kind of also like, hey, like now you're in the heart of New Brunswick. The goal here is one, the bus stop stays. Um, it's a great location as far as I can tell for the bus stop right now. We're looking to add wayfinding to the location, uh, some beautification, and do an art installation in the center uh, to just make it just sort of very attractive and eye catching. There's not a ton of space on it, right? Like it's not this massive piece of land that you could do, an absolute ton of stuff. Theoretically, we could do, a fountain or something, but that seems unlikely as that they break a lot, and I think a good art piece commissioned to be designed and in line with the Helix projects and a lot of the eds and meds and STEM uh, gearing of the city, I think would be a good focal point, welcome point uh, for visitors and for workers and residents, depending on how they get to work or get to that location.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Any other questions?
Hey, so I have a quick question.
Sure.
Brent, so some of these buildings, like in the downtown corridor, I mean, not some, like all of them are privately owned. Um, does this mean like those funds are going to be, or is the city going to purchase those properties, or no? It's like for the
Well,
owner.
good question. So, very directly and transparently in the rules of this, we are not allowed to own any of the buildings that get the funds for this. So they have to be privately owned, privately well, they don't have to be privately managed per se, but the buildings have to be privately owned buildings with private businesses or something to that effect. With the city can't own them, the state can't own them, the county can't own them. They might be able to be involved in the operations. It's something like a museum or gallery or something. There might be some public impact on the curating or management of the facility, depending on how things go. But the actual buildings, there's no public buildings that are allowed to receive funding from this. It has to be the private owner, and it actually ends up being it's sort of kind of getting into the weeds, but it has to be sort of like a awkward pass through where the funds are given to us, and then we bid out the project and everything, but it's sort of a grant to whoever the person or entity that the person is, sorry, the entity that owns the building. And I actually found out at like a meeting or two ago with the EDA that it actually counts as income, and they're going to get like a 1099, and they're going to have to like report it on their income tax for the business or their person as part of the project. So it's sort of a very unique grant program insofar as anything I've had to deal with before in that capacity. But yeah, no, it's all for straight up only private property.
Yeah, like for
Except for the
example,
other
like
stuff, which is like very explicitly, public space for like the public space investments. The actual rehabilitation for stuff inside for actual buildings is hard line only private.
got it. Like yeah, just thinking about the CH Martin, the Investors Bank, and like next to Smashville there used to be like a I guess like a T-Mobile or Sprint store. So yeah, just thinking about those buildings as well as the Brunswick Bank and Trust. So yeah, this could be used for all of those because they're private.
Conceivably,
Got
conceivably.
it.
Although
Thanks.
funds don't stretch that far, but conceivably, we'll put that in consideration, seeing depending on how we can split this up. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing a lot of other questions. So April, if you want to go again.
Yeah. Well, actually, the question that was just asked prompted a sort of a sub question on that point. So for the museum, that would be proposed, the museum and gallery for the Brunswick Bank and Trust building.
Yes.
Do you know, is the current private owner of that building intending to operate the museum or have a different manager come in to curate and run that project?
That I can't tell you conclusively because I don't know the answer to that. I think all
Okay.
options are being weighed right now, but I don't know where they're going to land on that aspect. But I imagine I have my gut says that it probably will be like some sort of public-private partnership kind of deal for the ultimate management of it, but it could go either way.
Got it. But I assume that for the project to be on the list, that the current private owner has said, yes, we would like this to be a museum and gallery.
Yes, that's actually they've been, as far as I know, trying to find a private investment for something similar on and off for a couple of years now. Um, so yes.
Okay. And then my the other thing I had wanted to say, it's somewhat of a comment, and I would just like your thoughts on if it's something that's been under consideration. So on the proposal to purchase the Seward Johnson statues, I think that those have been a nice and interesting addition to the downtown area. So that seems like a fine plan. Um, but it also does feel like this funding is such a huge opportunity to support up and coming local artists and ones that are more representative of the demographics and culture of the city today. And I would think, especially if we, as part of this package of projects, are thinking of transforming the bank and trust into a museum, which would focus more on the past, don't we want other features of downtown that we're investing in to be more representative of the city, of the present and the future? So um I guess what I'm interested in your reaction and response to is, has there been any serious discussion of alternatives for, supporting up and coming local artists, or has the discussion really only been about purchasing these statues?
The discussion's gone both ways and has potential to be a mix. The benefit, obviously, of the existing statues, even if they're the ones we don't have, is that they exist, right? We can purchase them, put them in place, and that's quick. We don't have any worry about running afoul of our hard deadline. Um, but it may be a good idea to see if we can strike a balance between that. Maybe we don't depend on all of our proposed statues or sculptures to be local so that we can guarantee that we're getting across the line. We don't have several artists on deadlines and concern about turnaround on that front. And we might be able to mix that up. So that's definitely something we're under consideration and a topic that I hope to discuss with the NJEDA folks tomorrow to see what their if they have any issue or if there are any what do you call it? If there are any government procurement issues with how this works for in terms of hiring artists, if you can just sort of pick and choose or if you have to go a certain way. So I'll have more idea of that later, but that's a good idea and we'll put that under consideration for sure.
Yeah, and I think, that's a worthy consideration for any city that might be receiving these funds, but certainly New Brunswick in particular, I think, has a very vibrant and bustling arts and music culture. So it would just seem like a shame to miss out on that opportunity to support and grow that really unique and valuable aspect of our city. That's all.
Okay. Anybody else?
It
Yeah.
sounds very exciting, Dan. I look forward to seeing what happens in the next 2 years when this money comes. I think
You know,
just
maybe,
another step forward for the city.
yeah. Okay. I'll field the sort of last call for anybody who has any more comments or questions. All right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good night.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good wait. Somebody's in chat. Happy to see. Oh, that's Anthony. All right. All right, everyone. Have a great night. Thank you all for coming. You have my email. Hopefully you saw it on the thing. It's ddominguez@cityofnewbrunswick.org. That's with a Z, D Dominguez with a Z at cityofnewbrunswick.org. If you have any more comments or questions, feel free to send me an email and I'll hopefully respond and we'll definitely be putting them into our consideration process as we wrap up our application.